Hey everyone, it's your host, Gabby. We've been a little quiet on the podcast lately because we've been taking a summer break and traveling in Alaska. We're working on exciting episodes and partnerships for this upcoming season, so make sure to follow the podcast if you're not already, so you're the first to know when something new drops. We're also posting regular updates on our Instagram account, Women in Wild Places. So now I'll get into a recap of how we spent our time in Alaska. If you've listened to other episodes in the past, you might remember me mentioning my fiance and I had plans to get hitched over the summer. We started formulating our plan around our wedding over the winter when we decided we wanted to do something that felt most like us. Originally, we were planning a more traditional wedding, but we realized it didn't really match who we were in our origin story. After some talking, we landed on getting married on Denali. Not in Denali National Park, but actually on Denali. It was one of the first things that we spoke about when we first met on Halloween years ago, and once we started dating, it immediately became an objective for us together. Tim had already summited years ago along with many of the other 7 summits, but it was his favorite mountain and he had always wanted to go back. And a few months before we met, I had completed a Denali prep course with Alaska Mountaineering School, so Denali was pretty fresh on my mind at that point. Alaska had also always been a through line for us because we had both spent time living, exploring, and working there separately years before we actually met each other. So in 2023, we made an attempt along with 4 other friends. We made it to about 17, but we weren't able to summit due to weather, and we wrapped up our attempt after 18 days on the mountains. While the summit is, of course, a huge accomplishment, and I would have loved to reach the top, I still really enjoyed our time on the mountain. I learned a lot about myself and my abilities and my partnership with Tim. And while I was a little beat up physically afterwards, I knew that I wanted to go back one day. One of our friends, in particular, Mike, was there with us on the mountain, and Tim and Mike had been talking about going back to Denali ever since our 2023 attempt. It started to feel more like a distinct possibility last winter. At that time, I knew right away it wouldn't be in the cards for me because we had a new baby, and the length of a Denali expedition is quite a bit longer than either of us wanted both parents to be away from our son. So the plan was for Mike and Tim to go back together. And that was along the same time frame when we had the idea to get married in Alaska. So we figured we would combine this into one trip. We were excited to find out that our friends and wedding photographers, Abby and Callan Hearn of the Hearns, were available at the end of June. This started to give us kind of a time frame that we could go by. Our goal was to fly onto Denali Base Camp with Talkeetna Air Taxi, who we had both traveled with extensively in the past, and have our ceremony there. The logistics of planning an expedition, family trip, destination wedding on top of a mountain were pretty complex. Tim and Mike had lots of planning, gear prep, and travel logistics to take care of just themselves. Thankfully, they were well aware of all the nuances of climbing Denali since they had already done it and had just about all the gear, so it was easier for them to put together than it would have been if they had never done that trip before. The plan was for the boys to head out early June, and then me and my son would follow with my parents a few weeks later. But the tricky part was to schedule with Abby and Callan, sketch out a general timeline for our family to travel, and to secure other vendors without picking an exact wedding date. But there's not always a guarantee that you can fly onto the glacier on any given day because of the weather. It would have been ideal to leave a few days of a window, but in order to simplify our planning, we realized we really needed to just pick a date. So we chose a date, we crossed our fingers, and we just kind of hoped for the best. We didn't actually end up making a plan B. I think neither of us really wanted to make a plan B because we were just banking on the fact that this would work. Back to Tim's expedition, it's usually recommended that you leave about 18 to 20 days to climb Denali for acclimation purposes and to accommodate for weather because there's pretty much notoriously always bad weather that you have to account for and stay weathered in while you wait for a window. So the date we chose for our wedding at the end of June would give my parents and I time to travel so they could experience Alaska and also give Tim and Mike time to finish climbing before our wedding. If they took the longest amount of time possible, then we wouldn't all be together until the day before the wedding, which did stress me out a little bit, thinking that I was going to say goodbye to my fiance and wouldn't see him for 3 weeks until the day before our wedding. But if all went well, we would actually have some time to travel together before the wedding. The other thing we had to think about was how much space we actually had for guests, because you can only fit so many people onto the Otter planes that TAT has, and they only have so many planes. We invited our immediate family and ended up with a list of 20 people, so we kept it nice and small. Once we settled on some of those logistics, we started spending our time doing kind of typical wedding planning stuff. I got a wedding dress with my friends. We set up food to pick up from an awesome bakery in Talkeetna that we love. I found a hair and makeup artist. Something that was fun was getting our marriage license through the state of Alaska, which was actually super easy. And they sent us back this really cute packet where someone had made little hearts on it and gave us notes on exactly what to do. So whoever issues the marriage licenses in the state of Alaska in the Anchorage office, thank you. That was really sweet. And of course, we needed to select our priest and officiant. And Mike was our very obvious choice. He was actually there at the same party where Tim and I met. I met him for the first time in that moment as well. And he has watched our relationship blossom over the years. And he was already a certified officiant, so it was the obvious choice for us. Now, as the summer got closer, I was getting more excited and also a little nervous about solo parenting for potentially up to 3 weeks without my partner. I knew I would have some help from my parents, and also Tim's family that lives close by is extremely helpful, but I was still just nervous because we had never spent this much time apart even as a couple. We had also taken our son on planes before, but not since he became a super mobile toddler that has lots of opinions. He's very energetic, and I was, definitely freaked out to take him on a flight that is not exactly short. We had to keep working on some more logistics around how do you pack for an expedition, general travel for a wedding, and for entertaining a toddler on a plane for 7 hours. I was just thinking, how am I going to make all of this fit? What am I going to forget? Like, don't forget the marriage license. Don't forget our rings, and traveling with these valuable items and some family heirlooms and gifts from my grandparents. I definitely wanted to make sure that I didn't forget anything. I couldn't believe how fast it came up, and I did feel pretty emotional saying goodbye to Tim when the date rolled around in early June. There had just been so much preparation and buildup. We had never been apart as a couple for more than maybe 5 days. And there's, of course, the big part of me that wished that I could just join them on the climb. I love being on Denali. I really wish that I did reach the summit and would love to try again. But I knew that this was going to be a special trip for the guys, and I was happy to be able to support them like Tim had supported me in doing my own individual trip in the spring. It felt like everything was going off without a hitch. They had good initial travels, and they got onto the mountain the day they were planning, which doesn't always happen. When we had our expedition in 2023, we couldn't leave for another day and a half than we had planned because of the weather. So the fact that they were able to get on the mountain right away was super awesome. They were also following a really smart plan in terms of how they were approaching their climb. So they would start in the middle of the night. This allows you to basically move when it's coldest and safest to move, especially at this point a little later in the season when it warms up so much, to avoid unstable conditions. And they were on skis this time. We were not on skis in our 2023 attempt. It's safer for a two-party team. I'm also super thankful for the newest Garmins. They basically look like an iPhone now, and they have cameras, and you can message directly from them. It just looks like a smartphone. The technology has improved so much. So Tim and I could actually send pictures back and forth. Granted, they were a little grainy, but just the fact that we can even do that. And he could send me some pictures of Denali, and I could send him pictures of our son. It was just a really nice way to stay connected when we were so far apart. They were making such incredible time. They ended up reaching the summit in just 9 days, which is quite a bit faster than usual ascent times. Quite a bit. They were really blessed with excellent weather. And what they had already planned to be their rest days were days that ended up being bad weather. So it really set them up for success. They didn't have to wait extra days due to bad weather when they weren't planning for it, which is just a stroke of very good luck. I was also ecstatic and relieved to know they would be off the mountain right before I was set to land in Alaska and we could all be together as a family again. I was so excited. But it didn't come without its challenges. I would say taking a toddler on such a long travel day, 2 flights from New York all the way to Alaska, it is not for the faint of heart. I thought I was being really smart. I packed everything I could think of. I had new toys that my son had never seen, books, all sorts of gadgets, blankets, and I even got a tablet. I was like, I will try anything just to get through this plane ride. And I will tell you, it was, I don't want to say a complete disaster, but it definitely wasn't easy because our son is so mobile. So, yeah, lots of tears were shed from the both of us, but landing and seeing Tim in the airport was one of the best moments ever. Just knowing they had successfully reached the summit, they were safe, and we were going into this next part of the trip, which is our travel and getting married. So Tim picked us up from the airport and we were there with my parents, our son, our friend Mike, and then we were able to travel. My brother-in-law and their family own an amazing lodge in Kenai called the Salmon Catcher Lodge. So people go there mainly for fishing, but you can do all sorts of activities, adventure activities, rafting, fly-ins, salmon fishing, halibut fishing. We went to the lodge, which was so great to see the family, and the food is also absolutely delicious. And I decided I wanted to take my dad halibut fishing because he had never gone halibut fishing before. He'd done deep sea fishing, but not in Alaska. And he kept saying, "Oh, Gabby, I have these patches that you can put behind your ear the night before, and they're supposed to help you with potential seasickness." And I was like, I'm fine. I used to work on boats. I'm not worried about it. I don't get seasick. I'm fine. So we head out early to go halibut fishing. It's pretty yucky out. It's pretty cold. It's windy. And you could see just even from a distance, there's a lot of whitecaps on the water. It was not a chill bluebird calm day at all. We go to a beach to put in Ninilchik, and it's really fun. They have tractors that pull the boats into the water from the beach so you can take off from there. And we're going and we're going. It takes us probably over an hour to get out, and the waves are freaking huge, like huge swell. We're rocking around, and I'm like, okay, I feel all right. Like, I'm okay. And it wasn't until we finally got out there and we stopped the boat, and the boat was just rocking and rocking. I was so sick to my stomach. I never even touched a rod, which is not what I was expecting because I actually love halibut fishing. I had done it several times before and always had a great time, and I couldn't wait to take my dad out, and I was just completely out for the count, just miserable. And I thought that it would get better. No, it didn't get better. I don't even know how many hours we were out there, and I was not well. My dad was sick too. Everyone else was okay, but the two of us were not doing good. I couldn't wait to get off that boat and just go back and chill. We were actually set to travel from the salmon catcher to Homer that day. So we got back. We did relax for a little while, try and get some strength back after being so sick. And then we traveled to Homer. It was a beautiful day by the afternoon. I was super excited because neither of my parents had ever been to Homer. We ended up staying in a really beautiful home right on the water, and we had such a great few days. Some of the highlights were going across the bay to Halibut Cove to have a meal on the water and heading across the bay to hike to Growing Glacier. It felt really special to me to bring my son to the glacier so he could see a place that I had a personal connection to since I first saw it in 2013, and it was the first time that I saw a glacier up close like that. I did notice how much further the glacier looked from the shore of the lake since the last time I had visited, and it made me think how this might be gone in my son's lifetime. I doubt that he will actually remember the details of this trip, but I do hope that somewhere inside of him, it helps him to build an appreciation for the natural world and the responsibility we have to protect these landscapes before they disappear. Another great aspect of being in Homer was that we were able to visit with friends from over the years. So we had the chance to get together with friends I used to work with and live with. But it never quite feels like enough time. Like it's always so rushed. I wish I had more time to actually spend time and do things with these friends, but just being able to see them was really lovely. I was able to pop into the Salmon Sisters fish shop at the end of the Homer Spit. And it was so fun to see how much it's expanded since I last visited. There's a coffee shop. They have so much great swag. I got a really cute sweatshirt. They have cookbooks and, of course, lots of great fish. And we sent quite a bit back home, which was like a gift to our future selves. I'd say we thoroughly enjoyed our time in Homer, and I was pretty sad to see it come to a close, but also knew that it meant we were one step closer to our wedding. We said goodbye to Homer, and then we went to Anchorage to run some errands, like stocking up on food and drink for where we were going to stay for our wedding. And we picked up the most gorgeous cake from AK Wedding Cake Boutique. Ember, if you're listening, I hope you know how much we loved our cake. It really was like a piece of art. The way that she did the frosting, the way that she made these beautiful flowers, they looked like real flowers. I couldn't believe, and it was all edible, just absolutely stunning. If you need a wedding cake and you're in Anchorage, definitely go Ember. At this point, the rest of our family that was flying in for our wedding was arriving, and we all kind of caravanned up to Talkeetna. We had rented a property outside of town that had 2 pretty large cabins and 2 yurts, so it fit just about everyone in our wedding party. Tim and I settled into one of the really cute yurts, and the excitement of the fact that our wedding was actually here, it was starting to set in. I was able to lay out everything I was going to wear for the wedding in the space where my mom was going to stay. And seeing it all together made me get kind of emotional. Like this was actually happening. Up until then, we were on a wonderful vacation, and now it was hitting me. We're actually about to get married. We didn't have too much time to dally because we all headed over to our favorite spot in town for dinner at the Denali Brew Pub. It was really fun to have the family together and to kind of start and kick off the celebration. What would be a very special couple days. Everyone ate, drank, and was merry, and we walked to the river. We saw Denali, and we were looking right where we would be landing in less than 24 hours. I wanted to spend the night hanging out with everyone and getting a good night's sleep, which of course kind of contradict with each other. So we all spent some time, but when Tim, Merlin, and I headed to bed on the earlier side, we kind of thought we were doing ourselves a favor. But the joke was on us because we ended up awake nearly all night since our yurt was infested with mosquitoes. And it wasn't just like a couple mosquitoes, it was infested with mosquitoes. So we were up all night basically trying to shield our son from getting devoured and then us individually. But we ended up just covered in welts. Like my arms had so many welts on them. And actually, in the wedding photos, if you kind of zoom in, you can see them. Eventually, we had to go into my parents' cabin and ask my mom if we could use her bed so we could try and get a little sleep. At this point, I was spiraling because I knew I would be an exhausted mess the next day, and I kept getting worried about how tired I was going to be. I think I ended up with maybe 2.5 hours of sleep total, and I looked like a raccoon zombie when I woke up. Not exactly how I imagined starting off our wedding day. So I was pretty nervous about that. Thankfully, I started to sort of wake up with a shower and some coffee and fruit and snacks. And the magic sorcery of my makeup artist, Trina, who arrived pretty early. She was able to camouflage everything and make me look like I was actually well rested. And the adrenaline of what was to come started to lift me up. If you're in the Anchorage area and are in need of a hair and makeup artist, I highly recommend Trina. So her and her assistant basically gave me this cooling face massage while they were preparing my skin and my hair, and it felt like a spa experience, which really helped me out considering the fact that I was so exhausted and had really puffy under eyes. Definitely reach out to Trina. She understood the assignment. Everything came out perfectly and as I was hoping it would. And as I was getting my hair and makeup done, Abby and Callan arrived and they started taking photos. Callan went out to search Tim, who he was finishing transcribing his vows, getting our son ready and getting himself ready basically at the same time. Luckily, I was just sitting there in my chair getting my hair and makeup done. He had a little bit more to do than I did. Once my hair and makeup was done, it was time for me to actually get dressed. I have to break down my outfit a little bit. So, the dress I ended up buying was not at all what I would have expected for myself. Usually, I imagine myself in something a little more flowy or vintage, maybe more simple. But when I tried on this dress in the fall, I felt amazing in it. And it's unlike anything I would have normally tried. It has a fitted bodice with a deep V and a pretty big skirt, almost like kind of a princessy dress, which is not my normal go-to. But my friend who was there with me when I tried it on, she said I couldn't stop smiling. And I knew that I kept thinking about that one. So I ended up going back and buying it. It's the Ada dress by Danielle Frankel. It was a little bit of a splurge for me, but I also felt like at this point in my life and on such a special day and such a big celebration, it was worth it to me. Now, when I was trying on dresses originally, the stylist kept asking me what sort of heels I was going to wear, and I would laugh because I knew that I would not be wearing heels. They would ask me where I was getting married, and when I told them on a glacier, I could see their brains sort of starting to melt. It was like wearing heels is not going to be possible. I'm going to be wearing some sort of boots, and they also couldn't compute what that meant. I knew I wanted to get some really badass boots that were also functional. I ended up finding Alaska Gear Company's bunny boots, and a light went off. I knew immediately that I was going to get these. They were going to be the perfect fit to complete my outfit because they're rated for comfort up to negative 34 degrees. So I knew that I would actually be warm even if it ended up being a super cold day. And because my dress had spaghetti straps, I was like, I have to at least keep my lower body warm. And the waterproof vulcanized rubber, I knew would at least keep my feet dry, even if the snow was wet. They're so cute and functional, and they're inspired by kind of classic cold wear military boots. And they're, of course, white. I love the idea of mixing together something feminine like my dress with something more rugged, like the bunny boots. You might see the pictures. If you're looking into buying any bunny boots or any footwear from Alaska Gear Company, you can use the code Women in Wild Places 10. You'll get 10% off. And some other pieces to go with my outfit. I had some awesome blue glacier glasses because you need sunglasses on the glacier because the sun is so intense and reflecting off the snow. I also had these pretty gold lily earrings and a little silk purse. And inside the purse, I, of course, had my vows, but I also had a stick pin that was my grandfather's, and a token my grandmother had gifted me years ago for protection on my expeditions. I've taken it on all my major expeditions, and Tim had actually just taken it with him to the summit of Denali. So even though my grandfather is no longer with us and my grandmother is 99 years old, she couldn't make it to Alaska, so it felt really good to have a piece of them there with me. Now, with everything together, it was time for Tim and I to have our first look, and when I saw him, I just couldn't hold my tears back. Knowing the trajectory of our relationship and us creating our family, everything it had taken to put our wedding together, all of the emotions were just sort of bubbling out of me. And I just felt so grateful that we had this opportunity to celebrate our love in this way, and knowing that it took so much planning and resources and that it was actually here. I was just so happy, so excited. And Tim looked so handsome in his suit. He had gotten a custom suit made from Breeches of Troy in Troy, New York. And then I saw our son in his little suit. He was passed out napping. He had had already a full day. And it was time for us to all get loaded up and head over to Talkeetna Air Taxi. It felt really funny to me to walk up to Talkeetna Air Taxi in my wedding outfit in full glam because the last time I was there, I was getting off of Denali and I hadn't showered in 18 days. The contrast is something both sweet and comical to me in the best way. So we all had to check in for our flight. Everyone steps on a scale. You can't see how much you weigh, but they see, so they know how to arrange everybody. for proper weight in the plane. And because there were over 20 of us, we ended up having 3 otter planes. Our family split up between 2 planes, and Tim, our son, Abby, the pilot, and I were on our own plane. So it was almost a little hard for me at first to enjoy the beginning of this flight because so much had been going through my mind in terms of getting everything prepared and getting to the airport, being exhausted. But once we started actually turning toward base camp, just the staggering beauty hit me in the face. I've done this flight a handful of times now, and every single time the word awe comes to mind. People say awesome. I say awesome all the time, but it just fills you with awe to see the striking beauty of this place. If you ever have the chance to fly into the Alaska Range, even if it's just for a scenic flight, it's one of the most beautiful things you could ever see. And the power and the strength of the mountains, it's just so humbling, and it makes you reflect a lot on what it means to be human, be part of this world, this natural landscape that exists. But back to just the moment, I'll say it was quite an entrance to land on the glacier and see all of our families standing there, and then watching us exit the plane and having our fancy clothes on. And I remembered, oh yeah, I'm not here for a climbing trip. I'm actually here to get married. Abby and Callan had everyone stomp out a little aisle for us. So you'll stomp out runways or walking paths on mountains like this to pack the snow down so that it's easier to walk on. So they stomped me out a little aisle so I could walk more easily. And our families were on either side, and Tim was at the end of the quote unquote aisle. And I made my way tromping through the snow in my boots with our niece, Juliet. She was holding my train, and my dad holding my arm. And we ended up there in the front of Tim with our loved ones around us in this setting. And it just means so much to us. And it left me just honestly choked up. And I handed my flowers to Juliet, our niece, and the flowers I didn't mention were absolutely stunning. Talkeetna flowers made us such a gorgeous bouquet and boutonniere for Tim and our son. And the colors of the bouquet and the boutonnieres matched the planes exactly. It was so fun how the colors were so striking against all of the white and the gray of the landscape. So without getting too much into the ceremony, I'll just say that Tim, Mike, and I basically all said different versions of the same thing. We recounted how we met, and Denali was one of the first things we spoke about, and how it's been a landscape behind our relationship in so many ways. And here we were with our son and our families getting married here. Tim's vows were so beautifully written. They were so funny and warm and thoughtful. And I was almost embarrassed to read mine, but the essence was the same. And just like that, we were officially married. It was so exciting. It just felt so good. The blue skies, we celebrated. We had a champagne toast and we rung the cowbell, which is a Hilgendorf family tradition. And we all wore railroad hats to honor Tim's father, who used to wear one when he was living. And while there are so many family members who aren't with us anymore, I really did feel their presence in the moment. I felt just elated and grateful. And I hadn't even fully mentioned the fact that it was the absolute most perfect day in terms of weather. I originally bought fleece-lined leggings to wear under my dress and a puffy down jacket in case of cold weather, but it turned out I didn't even need them. The sun was shining, the wind was basically still, and the mountains were in full view with basically no obstruction from clouds. It was one of the best moments of my life alongside the birth of my son, just sharing this very special moment in this place with the people that we hold so dear to us. We took photos, admired the landscapes and the plains, of course, and it wasn't long before it was time that we all had to leave. So our family piled into the 2 planes and we waved goodbye. And then Tim, Abby, and Callan and our pilot and I remained for a while, and we just took in the silence of the place and savored the moment. And eventually it was time for us to leave. And our pilot, Paul, he's the owner of Talkeetna Air Taxi. He took us on an amazing tour where he pointed out different climbing routes in the range and gave us a wealth of information about the roots. So we got back to Talkeetna. It was time to party. We snapped a few more photos at TAT, and then we knew we needed to hit up the Fairview, which is a historic bar and inn in Talkeetna. And something about walking around town in my wedding dress and bunny boots was just hysterical to me. Everyone was so sweet and saying congrats. And entering the Fairview in our wedding clothes definitely got us a round of applause. But the best part was that we had to become one with the disco ball. They have a disco ball hanging on the ceiling, and it has handles that you can hold on to, and you can lift your legs up and spin in a circle. So the bartender had me hop up and she spun me around, and I was laughing hysterically. Tim ended up hopping on with me too, and we just couldn't stop laughing. The whole bar was cheering. It was just a highlight that will live in my memory for the rest of my life. And if you go to the Fairview, please take your turn spinning on the disco ball. Thank you to everyone who gave us drink chips. It was especially fitting since disco balls have also been a thread in our relationship. Since we met on Halloween, I was dressed as an alien, but Tim and Mike thought I was a disco ball. We even brought little disco balls onto our Denali expedition. So yeah, very fitting. And then after our drinks, it was finally time for us to head back to the property and have our dinner. So we changed out of our wedding fits and we had just delicious food we picked up from Flying Squirrel Bakery, another one of our favorite places to eat in Talkeetna. The food was so delicious and there was so much of it. They made us salmon quiches and all different kinds of salads and sandwiches and cheese platters. It was kind of everything you could think of. And yeah, we just spent the night cheersing and reliving the day. And we ate our delicious cake from AK Wedding Cake Boutique. And we enjoyed the night until it was just time to crash. I didn't want the day to be over, but it was finally time to get to sleep, especially after we did not sleep at all the night before. We ended up having one more day in Talkeetna with some of our family members heading out, and the rest of us, we kind of milled around. It was quite a rainy day, which really pointed out to us how especially lucky we were to have the weather we did the day before, because it was nothing for rain for a few days after that. And once we left Talkeetna, I felt sad to say goodbye to my parents and the place that we were staying during such a special time. We drove through Hatcher's Pass and continued on to the Salmon Catcher Lodge in Kenai, where the rest of our family was planning on staying for a few more days. And our family was so nice to watch our son for a few days, so Tim and I could go on a little mini honeymoon. We didn't know exactly what we were going to do because it was a spur of the moment decision, but we found out the little lighthouse we admired in Halibut Cove was actually available, so we decided to stay there for 2 nights. We drove back to Homer and hopped on a water taxi to Halibut Cove, and one of the tenders of the lighthouse just let us borrow their ATV and bring our bags and food and champagne over to our little lighthouse. It was so perfect. No electricity, no running water. You don't really need electricity in Alaska in the summer. I mean, it's so light out. There's no need for lights, but there was water in a jug that we could use, and there's a perfect little cook stove. We spent our time basically walking all over the island. We cooked meals, we played cards, and we overlooked the bay and watched the boats and the float planes go by. It was just really special for us to be able to relax and spend time together one-on-one because we actually hadn't had a night away as a couple since our son was born. So it was like a big moment for us. After we were done staying at the lighthouse, we headed back to the lodge, and then it was time for us to actually finally make our way back to New York. Tim got to go salmon fishing with the family one day, and they had a great day out. And then we had a really nice afternoon hiking and hanging out with Abby and Callan and their daughter, and it was really sweet to watch our kids play together. And from there, we had another epic of just traveling back to New York from Alaska. Lots of hours in the plane, delays, etc. But we did it. Just reflecting on this trip and all the different parts of it, I feel both surprised that everything went off as perfectly as it did and just a great amount of gratitude. I'm not sure why or how we got so lucky, but I am so thankful. It really reaffirmed to me why place is so important to me and means so much to me, and why it impacts my memories so much. And it really makes me think about how landscapes impact our psyche and give us a sense of identity, a sense of well being. And just sharing Alaska with our whole family and having this be a place where Tim and I have shared so many special moments, it only solidified our connection. Since getting home, I've been thinking more about the next season of Women in Wild Places, and I'm really excited to continue discussing this thread of connection to place, how landscapes shape us, and our responsibility in both connecting to and protecting them. Thank you for listening to this recap of our recent trip, our wedding. I am also in the process of putting together an Alaska trip so I can share my love of the state with you. If you're interested in joining and you want more information, make sure to follow along with us at Women in Wild Places on Instagram and join our Substack community for updates. Thanks so much for being here and see you out there.